Good afternoon. Thank you for being here for this briefing. Before I get started, I'm going to allow everyone on the dais here to introduce themselves, starting to my left with Deputy Chief Hayes.
Franklin Hayes, Deputy Chief. Police Commissioner, Vice Chair, Ryan Ferguson.
Police Commissioner Linda Bernard.
Deputy Chief Mark West.
Ron Wilson, Deputy Chief Detective Bureau.
Commander Michael Chambers, 2nd Precinct.
Captain Derek Day, 2nd Precinct.
David LaValle, Assistant Chief.
Charles Fitzgerald, Assistant Chief.
Todd Madison, Deputy Mayor.
Eric Ewing, Deputy Chief, Eastern Operations.
Deshaun Sims, Deputy Chief, Western Operations.
William Sims, Captain, Internal Controls. Director Christopher Gravlin, Professional Standards Bureau.
Again, thank you all for being here. Today is a somber day for the Detroit Police Department. Candidly, we were robbed. We were robbed of one of our heroes. The city was robbed of a great father, a great police officer, a great brother, a great son, and a great husband. And we should all be outraged. We should be outraged. This is unacceptable. Minute by minute, the reality sets in that we have lost a hero in this department, one of Detroit's finest. We are devastated, but we are not defeated. We are devastated, but we are not defeated. And we will not give up. We're not going to be detracted. We're going to continue to enforce the law constitutionally and get these trigger pullers, these people who victimize our community, who victimize our neighborhoods, off the street in honor of this great officer. But we need help. It's not just us. We need the courts. We need the lawmakers to step up. It's getting a little bit old hearing about what everyone's going to do. It's time to do it. We are willing, but we are resolute in our mission to protect and serve this community. Last night, a Detroit police officer, along with a number of other officers, rushed to Joy Road and Marlowe Street responding to a 911 call for shots fired. Something that happens all too often in our community. And our officers respond day in and day out, even after this incident happened last night. They responded as they often do. They approached the building using their training and their tactics, and they were ambushed. The first officers arriving were ambushed by this gunman. In that vehicle was Officer Courts. He was shot and later died. He was a 40-year-old man serving this community, a father of 2 beautiful children and a husband, and the son of a retired Detroit police officer who loved his son, loved his city so much that he encouraged his son to join the Detroit Police Department, to continue his legacy. He served with dignity and integrity for 5 years. 5 years. That's it. He was without a doubt a hero. And you're going to hear that over and over and over again because it's important. We spend too much time talking about non-heroes, like the murderer who killed this officer, who was simply doing his job. To his family, words cannot say what I need to say. I don't have the words. It's unconscionable. Yesterday was just simply the worst day of this family's lives, period. I don't have words to make them feel better. I can only tell them that over time, the pain may get a little easier, but I can't guarantee it. The only thing that I can promise you is that we will never forget him, his service to this community, and we will continue to enforce the law in his honor and others like him. But again, we need help. We lock them up, keep them locked up. If you violate the law, there needs to be a penalty for it. I don't see anybody fearing a penalty for it. To his partner, Officer Hudgens, she's also a hero. I've watched many videos in my 26-plus year career in this department. I've never seen heroic acts like the ones I saw this morning. Never. When they were ambushed, upon making that run, they had no chance. The officers responded in minutes. They had no chance. They had backup. They used their training and their tactics. And the murderer shot the window out of his apartment and immediately shot the officer while he was in the car. They put the car in reverse. The officers jumped out of the vehicle. Officer Courts struck, attempted to gain cover, but he was already hit in a major artery. He was dying. He collapses down on the ground. His partner, Officer Hudgens, began to administer first aid. Other officers who were on the scene try to give them cover. This brazen murderer, after shooting the officer, walks out of the building and proceeds towards the officer's vehicle. Officer Hudgens has to make a decision. She wants to keep direct pressure, her training, applied to her officer's wounds so that he has a chance to live. Behind her is the murderer who is walking towards her with this assault rifle. She makes the decision to give her partner a chance to live, keeping her back to the assailant. I've never seen anything like that. It's so many people who have never done this job that wants to tell us how to do this job. There's so many people that don't have the courage to do this job. That's an expert in how to do this job. What I saw last night and this morning were heroes that were doing the job. And I'm proud to lead them. But I'm frustrated. And please, nobody call me mad. I'm not mad. Mad is a useless emotion. I'm focused. This is unacceptable. And this should be the line. Whatever your tipping point is, this should be it. At this time, I'm going to bring up Director Chris Graveling from Professional Standards to talk about, in more detail, the timeline of this incident, and then we'll go to the Deputy Mayor for comments. Director.
Good afternoon. 7:30 p.m. last night, shots fired call came in from Joy Road and Marlowe in the city of Detroit. At 7:32, dispatch radioed out that location to our responding officers. Multiple units from the 2nd Precinct responded to that location. At 7:39, 2 scout cars were the original responding officers, to include Officer Courts and his partner, Officer Hudgens. What happened when they got there at 7:39, they drove past the location on Joy Road. Officer Courts did a U-turn, turned onto Marlowe Street, did a U-turn, and positioned his car at the intersection of Marlowe and Joy. What we have seen in evidence is exactly as Chief described. We see an upstairs window being blown out, apparently by ammunition being fired from that window, and then shots being fired at our officers before they were able to get out of the car. The second scout car responding there had pulled onto Marlowe and were quickly out on foot to provide cover to Officer Hudgens and Officer Courts. Next slide. Two additional scout cars also arrived on Joy Road at this time. So at that point, we had 4 responding cars, 8 officers on scene. 2 of those officers, upon hearing the shots fired, ran back to their car and were able to receive their patrol rifles from their SUV and set up cover positions for our officers. At 7:41, so within 2 minutes of the initial assault, the suspected gunman walked out of the building with this weapon in his hand. This is a 7.62 semi-automatic Draco pistol. It is similar in caliber to an AK-47 and has a banana clip as well. This type of weapon is designed to fire multiple rounds in very quick succession. As he walked out of the building, the other 4 officers providing cover for Officer Courts and Officer Hudgens opened fire and struck the man several times, resulting in his death as well. All of this occurred within the first 2 minutes of them responding to this call.
Good afternoon. Todd, Madison, Deputy Mayor. The mayor was at the scene last night. I responded to the scene, to the hospital to support Chief White, brothers and sisters in blue, and just along with a whole host of other supporters of the department, community supporters, just really, really frustrated with this whole occurrence. The gun violence, the senseless violence that we're seeing in our city and across the country. You know, we've already heard enough is enough. We've said that so many times, but like Chief White has said, it's about being focused, it's about deliberate action, and making sure that we support our men and women in blue and support this community. And so, to the Courts family, we will never forget. We won't. And at the appropriate time, we will do everything to make sure that we continuously wrap our arms around the family and continue that support. And then to my DPD's finest, to the men and women that serve each and every day. After what happened last night, the chief spoke to it. You all have scanners. Those 911 calls continue to come in. Our officers are right now answering and responding to protect this community. They're heroes, sheroes, and they continuously do it over and over each and every day. And we have to support them, we have to keep them upright, and we will as a community. I've received many calls from just supporters, the community, even activists, folks who don't agree with us all the time, but they're sending their prayers and well wishes to the chief. And many of them will be holding candlelight vigils for this officer. And we will come up with a solution, and we will work, and we will continue to push and make sure that what happened is not in vain, and we will not settle until we make a difference. So, Chief,
Thank you.
you definitely have my full support, and thank you all. And if anyone has any questions, we're more than happy to answer them.
Before we get into questions, I do want to make a few closing remarks before we get into questions. We owe these officers a debt of gratitude. They are the most courageous people to do this work, particularly at this time. We owe them a debt of gratitude. When you see an officer, remember that. Please. They deserve your support. I support them. This command team supports them. And I am unapologetic about supporting our police officers. They demonstrate excellence in policing day in and day out in a time of extraordinarily high scrutiny. They show up and they perform with the highest level of integrity. I'm not going to stand before you and say we haven't had an incident or incidents, but that should not ever overshadow the overwhelming majority of the men and women of this department that put their lives on the line for you and for me every single day, people they've never met. We need to support them. The lawmakers need to support them. The courts open up, have trials, hold people accountable. And these ridiculous gun crimes across this country, regardless of where you stand politically on owning a weapon, these assault weapons are ridiculous in our communities. And they're causing death, period. So thank you to the Detroit Police family. Thank you to our officers for what you do every single day. After that shooting last night, after losing one of our own, the officers were reassigned to the precinct to answer the same type of runs while the officers from the 2nd Precinct grieved. I want to thank this commander from the 2nd Precinct, Commander Chambers and Captain May. I know it's difficult. You have our support. You have this command team's support. And we have to make sure that we wrap our arms around these officers, particularly ones at the 2nd Precinct that I know are grieving and hurting right now. You have a good command over there. You all are family. You love each other, and that was evident last night. So thank you for your service. With that, I'll take any questions.
Hi, Chief. A couple of questions. Going off of what you just said, I mean, how do officers respond to these calls? How are they any match for these weapons that are out on the streets? And what was this guy after using a weapon like that?
I think he wanted my opinion, based on the evidence that I've seen thus far, it is my belief that he wanted to commit suicide by cop. The fact that he murdered a police officer and then casually walked out of the front door and advanced on other police officers as they were rendering aid to the officer he had just murdered, he wanted to die. And he had an assault rifle that was recently purchased, in light of everything that's going on in this country, an assault rifle that was recently purchased. Counterintuitive that we would be selling assault rifles at this time. We can't even slow that down. So after murdering the officer, he's now advancing on other officers who followed their training, acted appropriately, and stopped the threat. And then when they were done administering first aid to the officer, you know what they did? They administered first aid to the person who murdered the officer. What more can they do?
Elaborate a little bit on Officer Hudgens' actions. I mean, she had to make a choice there that is unbelievable.
She made a choice that many people in the same circumstance would say they would make, but it's the first time I've ever seen anyone make it. She made a decision to put her life, not on the line. I think she just prepared to die. She braced herself to be shot in the back of the head or in the back while she administered first aid. So he's advancing on her with an assault rifle. She's administering first aid. She's got her hand on the wound, applying direct pressure directly behind her, basically where Director Gravelin is standing. He's advancing on her with the with the assault rifle, the Draco. And she glances back, braces herself, and continues to apply direct pressure. Thankfully, there's another officer there who stops the threat. She's a hero. She's beyond hero.
Chief, a couple of questions. The first one, I know you don't want to discuss the murderer in detail, but you did make note of the fact that you felt that other people need to act. Was this person who had this gun known to DPD? And might he have been in prison otherwise, or other issues that may or may not have been addressed?
I am looking into whether or not a warrant was submitted for assault with intent to commit murder. I don't want to confirm that right now, but preliminary information suggests that he had a pending, or not a pending warrant, but a warrant was being reviewed in the prosecutor's office. But again, it would be irresponsible for me to confirm that until I actually lay eyes on it, but that is my understanding. But there's been a number of cases where people are out on tether, people are out on bond, low bonds. I just had a person attempt to murder his neighbor, stabbed the adult and they both were adults, but it was a father-son, stabbed him. $5,000 bond, 10%. Next door neighbors, he's out. So how does this end? What, they make up, have a barbecue? No. Someone's going to retaliate, or he's going to finish the job, and then we'll be back here talking about it once again.
One other question. The department is wrapping its arms around each other and the family of Officer Courts. But in looking at the plaques on the wall coming in the room, you've had 6 officers die in the line of duty in the last 5 years. What can you do? What can the department do to protect its officers? What needs to change in order to prevent 2023 having yet another police officer murdered?
Yeah, well, you look at the uptick in law enforcement officers being murdered around this country. And sadly, there's a lot more to just what we can do. I mean, the officers exercise daily great restraint. They use their training We're some of the best trained, which is why, you know, a lot of agencies try to poach us. They know we've got a fantastic police officer in the city of Detroit. So the officers use their training. They have their equipment. Could not be prouder of how they perform. But the reality of it is this is beyond Detroit's issue. This is the country's issue in the relationship with law enforcement. It's this, you know, anti-law enforcement conversation. There is zero penalty for criminality unless it's something extreme. There's no penalty for bad behavior. There's no fear of the judicial system. It's not correcting behavior like it used to. When you had mandatory 2 for carrying a legal weapon, it changed behavior of people who thought about it. So now when you carry a legal weapon on Monday and we complete the report, you're out. And you're in the same place with a tether on, waiting on your court date, which may or may not happen for a year or 2.
So, Chief, you've talked about the prevalence of guns on the streets for a while now. How does this impact the quality of life for Detroit citizens, and how does this impact the work that officers are doing every day?
I mean, you report on it. I mean, the quality of life. I mean, we have a great community. We have tremendous community support. The deputy mayor talked about, even our activists have called me, our activists, and said, this is unacceptable. We support you. We support good policing. We just want to make sure that everything is correct in how you do it. We support you. So when you talk about the quality of life, we're here all too often talking about double shootings, triple shootings. And the officers do amazing work. They do. They make the arrests. We're making the arrests. But how many times do we stumble onto someone who should have been incarcerated that's out on the street committing another act? So it has a tremendous impact. You know, I'm not standing here reporting on a fist fight that keeps happening in and around our community. I'm reporting on double shootings, triple shootings, people in drive-bys. We don't have drive-by fist fights, shootings. So we need to have the right conversation. Illegal guns, that's what's happening. If you're legally carrying a gun and you have a CPL, more power to you. Don't make impulsive decisions, because we see that too. We see last shooting we had, both were CPL holders. Decided to, you know, you look at me wrong, I'm going to shoot you because I've got a shiny new gun in my pocket. Need to use it, just bought it. That's what's happening. But then you got the illegal guns. It's driving crime in our communities, and we all have to care. We all have to care. This is all of our problem. You know, it's comfortable to keep calling it Detroit's problem, right? Look what happened around the state last few days. Look what happened in communities that you barely hear on the news. You all love to report Detroit, but when you're reporting Fraser and other cities that's having shootings, impulse decision-making, road rage incidents, maybe it gets attention now. So what are we going to do about it? Have a meeting and talk about it? No, we need to take action, and we need to all partner in this. We can do something, but we're not. We're not. We're not doing enough. And so I got a dead police officer, and candidly, it's heartbreaking to look at these officers. But do you know what I dread beyond looking at the faces of my officers? What I'm dreading is having to tell, once again, that mother, that daughter, who cried out when she learned her father died. And out of respect for her, I will not tell you what she said. But every member of my command team was standing there, and there wasn't a dry eye.
Has the department figured out a way to slow down the prevalence of assault weapons getting into the city?
Yes, and we try, okay, but again, the officers do amazing work. But we are not the whole judicial process, right? We submit warrants, warrants get reviewed, warrants get signed, courts, penalty, absolute penalty. We're not part of the penalty process. We submit warrants, warrants get reviewed. Prosecutor's been fantastic, reviewing our warrants and submitting them, so this is not anything about the prosecutor's work. But low bonds. We've started something now where once we get a victim of a shooting or a victim or a perpetrator of a shooting, we look at, should they even be out? Should they be out? Should they be incarcerated right now? Oftentimes we find they're waiting their court date on a serious felony. So even if you're a victim of senseless shooting, if you're not on the streets and you're not supposed to be, that's a life saved. Because there's a lot of retaliatory stuff that's happening too. So.
All right, thank you.
You mentioned the Draco semi-automatic firearm. Are these weapons that people should have access to? And when I say people, I mean civilians. Should they have them?
Well, you know, my position is my independent position with regards to should they. That's a personal view that I have, and I absolutely feel they should not. An assault rifle is just for that. Okay, it's not a hunting rifle. It's not for hunting deer in November. That's not what it's about. This is an assault rifle. So that's my opinion. But what we're going to do is enforce the law constitutionally, and if you're using those weapons illegally, then we will deal with that.
Are you surprised that more people in law enforcement don't share your views when it comes to assault weapons?
I don't know what other people in law enforcement what views they share and how they compare to mine. I don't. I have a police department to run and men and women to lead and a city to do everything I can in my power to keep safe, and that's what I'm focused on. I haven't sat at a round table with other officers from other agencies discussing their personal views. We talk about how we can collaborate and reduce crime in our communities. So, but I don't know that to be factual.
All right.
Hi. I was wondering if you were able to reveal the name of the suspect.
We have a confirmation on the name of the suspect. Yeah.
We can provide it.
We'll get it to you.
Awesome.
I didn't want this to be about him.
I know.
I want this to be about our hero. And so I purposely did not want to talk about the murderer by name. But we'll get the name to you.
Do you know if he purchased the gun legally?
We're looking into the facts surrounding that. We know at this point that the gun was purchased within the past 2 weeks. We know that he was likely present when the gun was purchased, but I have not confirmed if, in fact, he purchased it. But we're looking into it.
And then I know you said you didn't want to talk about this right now, but I guess I have to ask. You said there was a warrant, or you think there might be. Does he have any priors with the department, or was he sort of on your radar?
He wasn't on our radar from the standpoint of we're looking for him. He had, and again, this is unconfirmed, so I want to be clear. You know, I get briefed every half hour on this case since it happened. What we're looking into right now is that he had at least someone was submitting a warrant on him. We're looking to see if the warrant was in the prosecutor's office. It was not the Wayne County prosecutor's office. We're going to confirm what prosecutor's office it was in, what was the status of that warrant, and it is my understanding that it's for an assault of crime, a very violent assault of crime. It's very, very serious, but we don't have confirmation just yet.
Thank you. Sorry, last question. Are you going to release body cam or dash cam footage?
As we've done in the past, while our investigations are active, we release stills, and at some point we will evaluate the need to release body camera.
All right, thank you. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
for your loss.
Good afternoon, Chief. You may have said the other hero's name, Hudgens, first name and how many years on the department for her?
We got the first name. Amanda. All right. How many years? About the same amount of time, but we'll get confirmation. But it is Amanda Hudgens.
Okay. We had the shooting into a house last week on the west side that was on video, made a lot of news. Was that, it looks similar. Was that also a Draco gun?
Was that a Draco? I don't think that was a Draco. Was it? Yeah, we'll confirm.
And I know you don't want to talk about the murderer. Do you know if he had any kind of a rap sheet or his age?
We do know that he's 19.
Okay.
And he has some history, but I can't recall it as we speak. Prior contact with us? East Point. All right.
And is he one that you've referenced in prior comments that he should have been locked up?
As I said, we've got to look to see the status of the warrant that was submitted for the murderer and make a determination on whether or not the warrant should have been signed by now. I mean, I don't know the circumstances. We have to be very careful before I say whether or not it should have been, shouldn't have been, what the status of it is. My understanding at this point is that there was likely a submission of a warrant. And I'm carefully choosing my words
Understood.
until I know more facts.
Was he a loner? Was he living alone? Did he have anybody?
It appears that he was living alone. Yes, sir.
And this was the first time he's used this gun, as far as you know?
I don't know that, but we'll be looking into that. We're investigating that right now and see if it's tied to any other crimes.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief, my condolences to you and your
Thank you.
department. Could you talk a little bit about the initial call that brought them to that scene, the shots fired? Were they outside, inside the department? Any details on that?
Yes, and we've been looking into that since the incident happened. It appears, and if, AC, if you want to add anything, please feel free, that he was shooting outside of the window. And then I also heard that there was some shots being fired inside of his residence, which was over that commercial building. In fact, one of the things that was interesting in watching the officer's body camera is that the officer was actually trying to declare it a barricaded gunman, meaning that the shots were being fired and he was barricaded inside. But they never got to that because he had shot and murdered our officer and decided to come out and advance on other officers.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.